I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast for my head to your ears. And today I'm doing part 2 of my talk with Craig Edwards. We had a lot of fun doing this, and we talked a long time, so I had to split it into 2 parts. And today he's going to talk about his adventures in the television and movie industry. He's got a lot of good stories, and I think you'll really enjoy this. I sure did. I'm going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Craig. I'm Leonard Riggs. This is my podcast from my head to your ears. But you went from there. You graduated. McLeansboro. Went to SIU. And how did you? What was your first professional job?
I kept rubbing up against it in weird ways. Not to mean that in a weird way itself, but in 1988, I took that year off and we went to Florida, and there was talk of me going to University of Central Florida at Orlando to finish up because they had a film studies course, and that's what I was doing. And the timing just didn't work out. I wasn't going to be able to get in because I had left SIU, what would have been my senior year, to go down there. Too late to get into classes, so I would have had to start at best in January of '89. And while I was there, though, the people we were staying with, the guy worked at a ripoff or a tiny little non-Disney thing called Boardwalk and Baseball, which was a tiny little amusement park in the shadow of the Big Mouse. And they had an episode of Superboy shooting there, the 80s syndicated series. So he said, "Do you want to come watch a TV show being filmed?" And yeah, I do.
Yeah, don't twist my arm.
Yeah. So he got me a free ticket, and I went and spent the day watching them film Superboy, which was,
wow.
marvelous. Yeah, it was really cool. And I took pictures and the whole 9 yards. In fact, it's funny because I put the pictures up on social media, all these years later, and all these Superboy show fan groups started coming out of the wall. Oh my God, new pictures of the episode with Leif Garrett. They were going out of their minds because I had pictures of, Leif Garrett and everything because he was the villain in that week's episode.
Oh, that's cool too.
So that was my first brush against it. And then I'm living in, after college, I moved to Northern Indiana, and I was trying to break into the business in Chicago because they had the Untouchables TV show was shooting there at the time. And John Hughes was making a movie every other month, it seemed, their career opportunities and all of those films that he did in the late 80s, early 90s. And I never even got an interview. I sent and faxed resumes, which, of course, my resume had nothing on it except that I graduated from university. But I faxed all these into production offices in Chicago and never even got a call for anything.
Sucks.
Yeah, it was awful. So after a year and a half of that, that's when plans were made to move somewhere else with some other people that I'd met at Southern Illinois University. And but while I was up there, somebody in Southern Illinois from the McLeansboro region reached out and said, "Did you know that they're shooting a big Tom Hanks, Gina Davis movie in Evansville, and they need extras?" So I ended up driving 6 hours down to Evansville from Northern Indiana to be a free extra in A League of Their Own for one day. Amazing. Yeah. But, and it's funny because the scene we were basically shooting the first game of the World Series near the end of the movie. And if you watch the movie, they decided that none of the other games mattered except the 7th game or whatever the deciding game was. And the first, second, third, whatever, all of those other games were featured in a very brief montage. So all of the days filming that I was there for, they could have used reaction shots of us anywhere in the film, but the actual sequence we watched wasn't even a part of the film anymore. And it involved a pregnant ball player getting spiked. Somebody slid into a base and hit her with the spikes in the belly.
Oh, wow.
And there was this whole subplot about if she was going to lose the baby. So that's what we were shooting the day that I was there. It was still an amazing experience. Tom Hanks, wonderful. Gina Davis, wonderful. I got mooned by Rosie O'Donnell that day.
Ouch.
Yeah, not just me. I mean, it was the whole crowd, but we all got mooned by Rosie O'Donnell. And Madonna was a jackass the entire day.
Which
So
pretty much is what she is, I
yeah.
think, in general, from what I ascertain.
So from
Yeah.
there, we ended up moving to Wilmington, North Carolina, because my friend I'd met at SIU knew they had made films there. He had vacationed down in this area, and he said, they make movies there. And I had no clue. What? Really? And it turned out that Dino De Laurentiis had, in 1984, made a film here, Firestarter. And it went so well that he bought a bunch of cheap land, which just happened to be near the airport and the waste sewage plant in Wilmington. Gee, I wonder why he got it so cheap. But he built an entire studio. So when I moved down in 92, he had actually gone bankrupt in 88, I think. And the studio had been sold to Carolco, which was the company behind the Rambo and Total Recall movie. And so Carolco owned it. And when I moved down, same kind of thing. It took me a long time to get started. But the very first thing I did professionally was I was an extra on the movie nobody ever remembers, even though it has huge names in it, Amos and Andrew, starring Samuel L. Jackson and Nicolas Cage.
I vaguely remember that. Very vaguely.
Yeah, it was not anything to do with the show. It was a play on a black man and a white man who come together under unusual circumstances, one named Amos, one named Andrew. And at one point, somebody said Amos and Andy in the film, and that's one of the jokes, is he says, don't say that. Samuel L. Jackson says, don't say that. Amos and Andrew only, The movie did not do anything. I worked on it for weeks and weeks and weeks and thought,
that's so disappointing, isn't it?
You can't put this film together. I must be the next star. It's Samuel L. Jackson, Nicolas Cage, and me. No, I'm in one shot for 10 seconds.
Oh, no.
Yeah, one shot. So
you also worked on the Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah, and that started at the same time. They needed so many to fill up Dino Hatton for the big
now
city
we're talking about the first Mario Brothers
1993,
movie,
the really first one, which we shot in a very hot cement plant in the summer of 1992 down here outside of Wilmington. They clocked the upper level at 120 degrees, and there were live sparks. It was one of the most dangerous sets I've ever been on, but at the same time had a blast. So yeah, did those two things, and that was enough to get me started. And this is kind of fun. I was working on Amos and Andrew as an extra, and I asked somebody, how could I want to be like a production assistant or something. How would I get that job? And they said, well, you see that lady over there? She's the second assistant director. If she thinks you're worth hiring, she'll hire you. So I started doing anything I could to help her out. And at one point, the weird connection, her boyfriend was the caterer on this film, setting up the dinner. So I said, is there anything I can do? And she said, Ken's down a guy tonight. Could you help set up the lunch? And I said, absolutely, because I was just sitting around base camp, not on set. So I helped set up all these salads. Well, double weirdness. I'm putting a salad on the table from the refrigerator, and I look up, and the other caterer's girlfriend is also helping out. And I look up into her face, and it's damn Bonnie Bedelia, Mrs. McClane from Die Hard.
You're kidding me.
I am absolutely serious. And so she was in town visiting her caterer boyfriend and helping set up lunch on Amos and Andrew. So
Bonnie Bedelia is
yeah. At 2 a.m, because that film shot all nights, because the whole film pretty much takes place at night. I guess they did a little bit of day right at the beginning of the schedule, but then they moved into all nights, and they kept that schedule all the way through, even when they were shooting interiors, and they would go bowling.
Oh, wow.
And stuff. But anyway, yeah. So that film, was amazing to work on, and I was overlapping it with Mario Brothers. But Cindy was the lady who they said would hire you. And at one point she introduced me to somebody else and said, that's Craig. He's been really helpful, and I'm going to hire him on my next movie. And her next movie was Mario Brothers, and she made good on it. So yeah.
It's weird how these things happen for a reason to get you where you're going.
So after that, once you get your foot in the door, it is who you know. So once you start working, you can keep working as long as nothing throws you out of the mix. But
you've worked with some pretty amazing people over the years too.
Yeah, it was a hell of a run. Basically 10 years from 92 to 01. Um, and
I
yeah,
think you worked with Jamie Lee Curtis on the Virus movie.
Virus. Yeah, that was a big thing. And I'll tell you a very sad story. I had her sign an original rolled Halloween poster, which got damaged in my house because I let somebody stay in my house who let something happen to it. So I no
Oh,
longer have that poster out, and I also don't have a Friday the 13th Part Two signed by both the director and the final girl.
oh no,
Both of those rolled posters
that hurts
with
me every time
autographs
I
to
hear that.
me, and yeah, and they were both destroyed, and they're never to be seen again.
Oh, geez.
But I got to work. It was a weird. You would be working on. So I stood in for an actor named Roy Brocksmith, and he's probably best known. Well, if you know Arachnophobia, he's the town mortician who eats a bowl full of popcorn and spiders and buys it.
I've
But
never
he's
seen that movie, and I'll get back to
probably
that. Why?
well, he probably is most famous as the guy who comes into Total Recall to convince Schwarzenegger that he's in a dream. You're in a dream,
Okay.
Doug.
Yes.
That guy, and he sweats,
Okay.
and it tells Schwarzenegger that it's not a dream, and he shoots him.
Well,
Well,
sweat
Roy
though.
was a tax man on the sequel to A Christmas Story called My Summer Story when we shot it, but it's
Oh,
now called
okay.
It Runs in My Family. And again, a little known sequel, considering there have been like 3 other sequels to A Christmas Story,
Right.
weirdly. But this was the first one. And because the kids had aged out, everybody had aged out. So instead of Darren McGavin and Melinda Dillon,
Dylan. Yeah.
we had Charles Grodin and Mary Steenburgen.
I
And
remember
instead
this
of
movie.
those other kids, the original kids, we had 2 of the lesser light Culkins, the ones who weren't Macaulay,
Oh, no.
Rory and Kieran. So that was the sequel that was shot here. And I stood in for Roy, who was the tax man. It was a big subplot where mom had to make the house look less nice so the tax man wouldn't charge so much taxes. So I stood in for Roy. Well, having met Roy through that, Roy Brocksmith, months later, I get a call, and it's Roy out of the blue. And he says, hey, I'm coming back to Wilmington. I'm going to be working on a film called The Road to Wellville, and they're
Oh, a
affording
great
me
movie.
enough money to have a personal assistant. Are you free? Would you be my personal assistant while I'm there? And I said, absolutely, because I wasn't doing anything. It was kind of a dead zone for production. So I ended up working for Roy directly. It drove him to and from the set. It was very easy. I ran and got a couple prescriptions for him. But
Cool.
what that got me was I got to meet Sir Anthony Hopkins because he
Oh,
was the star of the film.
another amazing moment.
So we're walking across. Roy and I are going for a wardrobe fitting, and I've driven him from this hotel to the studio, and we're walking across the studio lot, and this couple goes, Roy, and raise a hand, and we look over, and I go, oh my God, that is Sir Anthony Hopkins and Lady Hopkins. So we
Oh,
walk over, and
wow.
I'm just very quietly going to let them converse, and they start talking, and after just 10 seconds, Hopkins turns to me, thrusts a hand out, and says, hi, Tony. Hello, Craig. So now I'm on a Tony basis with Sir Anthony Hopkins.
That is
And
amazing.
and then they proceed, the 4 of us have a conversation because both he and Lady Hopkins, who I don't think he's currently married to, but was at the time, but they both included me in the conversation fully. So whatever was being talked about, it was 4 of us all talking about it. One of the most incredible experiences of my life.
I
And
bet.
then a few weeks later in the production of the film, I managed to get a picture with Sir Anthony, so one of my prized possessions, and he was very kind. But that film also had Dana Carvey and had John Cusack and had
Yeah,
Bridget
that was
Fonda, and it was a hell of
honestly
a
one of my
cast.
favorite movies that really has kind of faded into out of existence. You don't
Yeah,
see it released on Blu-ray or anything.
that's almost like most of my career for the
Doesn't that aggravate
obscure
you?
films, but usually pretty
Well,
good films. So
honestly, Kino Lorber, like I said, they're a great restoration company. They pick up a lot of films that are like that, and they store them and release them. And they have a request segment on their website. I might request that one because that would be a good one I think I really thought it was a good movie. I don't think it did particularly well though.
No, it did not. It bombed.
Yeah,
Alan
and it was
Parker
really
directed that.
funny. Dana Carvey was hilarious in that.
He's that's Roy comes in because he played Hopkins' assistant. So I was the
Uh-huh.
personal assistant, the actor playing Hopkins' assistant. But he runs in at one point. I remember distinctly because I ran lines with Roy. He runs in and says he's doing something. He says it very kind of nondescriptly, and then Hopkins doesn't get it and says, "What?" And he goes, "He's flinging boxes of shit at the patients." Because he was filling up the cereal boxes with his own feces and then flinging them at people.
Oh
Because
my
he
God.
was the crazy son of the Kellogg who didn't invent the cereal, but ran the asylum or whatever next door. So,
I
which is all a true story, by the way.
I think I had that on VHS, and I gave my VHS collection to my friend Brandon because I didn't have a VHS player anymore. So, and I was getting everything on Blu-ray, and I think that was what I gave to them. They might still have it. I don't know.
Well,
But
here's where, I've always had, a knowledge of film and enjoyed the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm working on Mario Brothers. This goes back to Mario Brothers. And I meet one of the assistant directors, and her name is Stefania Girolami Goodwin. She had 3 names. Well, she obviously had an accent. So I kind of asked her, you're not from America. No, I'm from Italy. And then she said, my father makes films over there. And she was the daughter of Enzo Castellari, the director of the original Inglourious Bastards, among many other
oh,
films
cool.
of Italian origin, including one of my favorites, 1990, The Bronx Warriors, which Stefania starred in as the female lead. So,
Oh, cool.
what a wild connection. And then the fact that I knew her father. So as soon as she said Enzo Castellari, I said, your father directed 1990, The Bronx Warriors. And she said, he did. And she was very impressed. Well, that cemented our friendship. And so that was another source of getting hired because she would get onto a show because she was a great assistant director. And then she would hire me because she liked the way I did, as in the jargon, run first team, which was coordinating the actors who make appear in wardrobe. So that's how, thanks to her, I got on the Margaret Mitchell story where I worked with Shannon Doherty, Empire Records that we hinted at earlier, with that incredible cast, and American Gothic, one of the 1-season series I got to do, Dawson's Creek. All of these were because she got hired and then hired me. So
I wondered how you got on those shows, and now I know. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Of
she
course,
was
let's
amazing.
go back to Empire Records because I hinted at that earlier. You have, of course, Renee Zellweger. Boy, I can't talk. Renee Zellweger was in that, and you have her first autograph from.
I do, yeah. She appeared in Interview magazine, and it was a full-page spread with a great shot of her face, and it said "Wager on Zellweger" was what they called the little article about her. But I asked her to sign it, and as she signed it, she wrote, "This is the first time I've ever signed anything, my very first autograph," or something like that. So yes, I absolutely, and it's the provenance is she wrote it, so it's got to be true.
You've worked with a few future Academy Award winners, Michelle Williams, her.
Yep. One of my very favorite people. Yeah, I mean, Empire Records was amazing because I've never been on a film like it. They brought us in weeks before they rolled a camera, which was very unusual. Usually you've got a week or 2 of prep and then you're into it. The cameras start rolling. But they had us for a month, and it was because Alan Moyle, the director, had convinced the producers that to make this film work, he needed these actors to all have real chemistry. And the way you get chemistry is you hang out with each other. So they would literally be brought to the studio every day, and stuff that ended up in the movie that wasn't in the original script. For example, the M&M thing where everybody got an M&M out of a box of M&Ms, and then one M&M was drawn, and whatever color match, whoever had the color matching to the one drawn out of the box got to pick the music. That was actually a game that they played during the rehearsal period and got put into the film, in a later script revision. But they did Pilates together, and Renee of course had to record her version of Sugar High for the playback later in the film. So all of this prep stuff was going on But in addition to letting the actors bond for what happened on screen, we all bonded. So it was a hell of a run. We started in September and that film went through December. So that was a long.
Oh, that was a long shoot.
Yeah, it really was, with that extra time that month. We started filming in October and it was supposed to be 60 shooting days. And it was funny because it went over. And at the end, the last like 4 days said day 63 of 60 and things like that.
I bet you hated it to end too at that point.
Well, you know what was sad about that one was because we all had such a great time that, as people wrap out, Rex Manning had gone, weeks ahead of the end of the shoot. And by the time we were down to the last few, Robin Tunney was one of the very last to go. But Renee and Rory Cochrane had already gone, and Johnny Whitworth and Liv. And all of those people had already wrapped out because once your part's done, you're picking up whatever's left near the end usually. But that is how I ended up in the film. So kind of a fun story. On the very last day of shooting, they said, we've got some extras in. We're going to beef up the autograph line for Rex Manning. And my ears perked up. I heard that over the radio. And I'm like, oh, really? So I ran to wardrobe and I said, you got anything that would make me stand out if I wanted to be in the autograph line? And they said, oh, boy, do we, because boy, do the creatives love when you ask questions like that.
Really?
So, yeah, they absolutely. They love that, guys. Dressing somebody who's, willing to, and I just said, make me stand out. So what they put on me, that blue flowing shirt, black jeans, and blue suede shoes in two tones, blue and black. And they put all this on me. And I wore it, and I went to hair, and I said, look at what I'm wearing. Can you do anything with my hair? Well, I had shaved my head that summer, so I didn't have a whole lot of hair. But they did what they could. They hairsprayed it up. They streaked and tipped it gold. Now really? I go to the director, and I say, would you like me in the autograph line, standing in front of him in that outfit with my hair like that? And he goes, oh, yes. Oh, yes, I do want you in the autograph line. So we walked into the set, and the first shot was they brought a camera tracking up the autograph line. So I turned to the girl in front of me because I'm ham. So I turned to the girl in front of me, and I said, do you by any chance have a makeup mirror? And she said, yes, I do, here in my purse. And I said, here's what we're going to do. So we worked out this business, and I said, we've got to wait and make this happen when we know the lens is on us. So wait until the camera gets all the way past us and the lens is on us. And what's going to happen is you're going to be fixing your hair or indoor makeup, and then I'm going to ask you to let me use your mirror. So we had this nice moment where just perfectly as the camera comes by, I leaned up and she holds her mirror out for me, and I start doing my hair almost like Fonzie, except I'm actually doing my hair in the mirror. So that was that nice bit. And then we completed that and a couple of other shots. And then the director said, all right, camera, line up on Craig. It's his shot.
Wow.
Yeah, I had no clue this was coming. So they lined up on me, and he directed me through 3 takes. And he said, the first time, he said, you're cooler than him. So I reacted, I kind of did the Isaac from Love Boat thing, like when he came out, because it was supposed to be when he comes out to the crowd. And I did the 2-finger, thing, and it was acting all cool. And he said, that was good. And then I don't remember what he directed me on the second one, but he said, do it differently, do whatever he directed. And I did that. And then the third one, he said, okay, we're going to give you one more. And he said, I want you to go wild, do whatever you want to do. So that is the one that ended up in the film. And that's where when he comes out and kisses his ring at the crowd, I drop the album I'm holding to get signed and just flutter like I'm just going to faint. And
I love it.
They cut that shot. And as soon as they cut, I got a round of applause from the cast and crew. And I had a feeling that was in. So
honestly, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, real quick. I wanted to say, so months later, I get a letter from the studio teacher who was dating the music supervisor on the film and was out in LA. And she said, I got to tell you, bad news. They don't know if they're going to be able to use you in this because the shot before that they have to use, you're not in it. And you can plainly see you're not in it. And so after that letter, I didn't hear nothing else. And the film bypassed the theaters in Wilmington. I never saw it on the big screen.
Yeah, it was. I don't recall it being
Yeah, it
around
did
here.
not have a big run. It played in like a Kansas theater for like 6 days, and that counted as a theatrical run, I guess. But when it came out on VHS, man, I was standing at like Blockbuster, like, open the door, let me in. I want this movie. So I ran the VHS home and I put it in, and there I was in the film. So they had decided, screw the continuity, let the blooper go. And sure enough, if you watch the film, there is a distinct shot of the crowd, and I'm plainly not in it. And then the very next shot is me there in the line. But hey, I'm in the movie, and they gave me a credit.
Awesome.
They gave me a cast credit for it.
Mel Rex Manning fan.
Yes.
Yes. And it's funny what I started to say a while ago. It was a surreal moment seeing you looking like you as I remember you, because you still had the baby face then.
Yeah.
Looking just like you did in our freshman year, pretty much, not really changing too much. Seeing you on a film, that was just weird. That was a surreal moment, especially as much as we love movies, So anyway, I'm so proud of your career. You've had such a great career. And of course you went on to do, like you said, you went on to do some TV shows, especially Dawson's Creek.
Yep.
Which I think seems like that's probably one of your favorite projects.
Well, 4 seasons, yeah, absolutely. Just for the run of that. It was,
Plus
yeah.
it was filmed in Wilmington, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It was, yeah. Started in the summer of '97. They had shot a presentation pilot. It was a weird confluence of events, because I Know What You Did Last Summer shot in Southport here in late '96, early '97, and Virus was shooting. And then right as soon as I Know What You Did Last Summer, written by Kevin Williamson, ended, he had geared up to do this presentation pilot for the WB for this series he wanted to do called Dawson's Creek that he had written. And so they were shot kind of back to back. And that 5-day presentation pilot was a shortened version of the pilot episode. The footage is in the episode, but they had to add to it when we came back to shoot the regular series. But what was really weird about all that was, while everybody was in town for Virus and I Know What You Did Last Summer and this presentation pilot, Kevin Williamson arranged to meet Jamie Lee Curtis because he was a huge Halloween fan, obviously. Well, when they met, she knew his writing from Scream and said, Halloween H2O needs a rewrite, and because she had enough pull for that one, she got him on as another producer and uncredited rewrite on Halloween H2O.
Oh, wow. Well,
the other thing about that was, while they're in town in Wilmington, our pilot for Dawson's Creek was directed by Steve Miner, who had directed Jamie Lee Curtis in Forever Young. So they re-established connection, and she says, you should direct Halloween H2O, which he then did. She got him on as the director. And then he said, well, you know who's a great actress? Michelle Williams. She should be in Halloween H2O. So all of that, the reason that, that film had that director and had Michelle Williams as a supporting player was all because all of this was happening in Wilmington at the same time in late 96, early 97. So,
of course, it gives you a total connection to the whole thing.
Yeah, it was wild.
A connection to the Halloween, your favorite.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's just another surreal moment in your career. That's just so amazing. And to think, again, Michelle Williams won the Academy Award a few years later.
Yeah.
For what movie was it? I forgot.
Didn't she just take it for The Fabelmans? I think that's right.
I think it is too.
She's been nominated several times.
Yeah, she's a great actress, though.
She is. She really is. And she's one of the sweetest people on the planet.
If you look at old Dawson's Creek reruns, you appeared several times in the show, didn't you?
Well, it never fails. They always want me to do something, and I ended up being the janitor at Capeside High. I make at least one appearance a season, and I'm brooming or mopping in the background usually. If anybody's going to watch Dawson's Creek again or rewatch it, the lunch lady, who's almost always the lady serving them their lunch when they go through the cafeteria scenes, that is my boss, Stefania, because that was her ham moment, was to play the lunch lady, which funny because your mom was a lunch lady.
Lunch lady?
Yeah.
Again, connections.
exactly. But then they threw me a bone and gave me a speaking role as a carnival barker at a game in a double date episode late in the first season. So I got another speaking role, and the series American Gothic did the same thing, threw me a speaking part bone. Those were huge money days. I made about $100 a day as a production assistant for probably 12, 14-hour day. So I mean, when you worked it out by hour paid, you weren't making all that much money, but $100 a day in the 90s was good money.
Plus, you get those huge residual checks.
Well, but then they would throw these bones and you would get to act, and you got scale minimum, and at that time it was $962 for an 8-hour day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and one of them, because of the way they had to shoot it, I got 2.5 days out of it, 2 days of shooting, and then they had to bring me in for one line. The camera starts in the back of my head, and they wanted a clarification. So when you couldn't see my mouth wasn't moving, they had me add a line to clarify what was going on in the scene. And that they had to pay me a half day for like an hour's work to take me over to the sound studio and have me watch my head bob and say something. And I got another, $400 or $500 out of that. So 2.5 days pay for that tiny role. And then the Dawson's one only shot for 1 day, but still made, with overtime, $1,000 for 12 hours work. So, and it's still paying residuals, 25, 30 years later. So,
and they're quite an amazing amount of money too.
Well, when it shows up and it's free and it's $20, I'll take $20 for free anytime you want to send it to me.
Get you a burger at the burger joint.
Sometimes they do come through for like 42 cents. I've certainly had some of the super small ones, but the fact that they just keep coming, and I guess they never run out. I said knocking whatever there. So yeah, I'll take those for the rest of the time. I don't get anything for Empire Records because that wasn't really a speaking role. And in fact, that credit that they gave me was a total bone they threw to me because that part didn't deserve to be credited in the cast, but they did it.
Well, I thought it was awesome that it is, though.
Oh, absolutely, because I have 2 credits.
That's become such a cult favorite and has just really grown over the years in popularity.
Well, I will announce. It's unofficial because the host has to actually make the announcement. But I will be appearing on April 8th, 2024, at the place where the exterior of the record store was shot. It's now becoming a bit of a thing to show the film there at that restaurant inside, and I'm the special guest. So I'm doing that again in a few months.
How many times have you done that now?
3, I think. This will be the 3rd, I think. So
becoming an annual event. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Fans come in. We had people in from, I think somebody was in from Australia this last go round. So just to watch it where where part of it was shot. So
that's pretty darn amazing. Of course, you got to work with Sean Cassidy on American Gothic.
Yes, he was the writer, creator. He was in town. He wasn't in town for much of it, but he was in town for about the 4th or 5th episode, and it was strongly set around the school because we had a young character named Caleb, played by Lucas Black, who went on to do the 3rd Fast and the Furious movie, and then some of the later ones he actually pops up in some of the more recent, like 9 and 10. He comes back playing the same role. But and he also had a long run on NCIS New Orleans with Scott Bakula. He was the young guy who could do the running because you're not going to make Scott Bakula run at 60 something, so you make the young guy run. But anyway, little Lucas. It was a big Lucas episode, so we were shooting around this school, and Sean's in town, and all of the moms of all of the extra kids, they all, of course, had his poster on the wall, and they were all fluttering and just ready to faint because he was there. And of course, 95, he's still looking pretty damn good,
Like Sean Cassidy.
Exactly. But he was so sweet and so gracious, and he signed so many autographs that day. And he's there being a producer. He's not there, he's not there interacting with the crowd, but he did. And he was I really thought even more of him.
He had a few hit records, and
sure,
he was a Hardy Boy, which is why I'm a I'm a fan because I love the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew mysteries.
Absolutely. I didn't get
So
anything signed by him though because it just wasn't
that's
it
sad.
wasn't that kind of an interaction, and I didn't have my camera around set when he was around. Now I did get Sam
You ever?
Raimi, who was one of the
Oh
executive producers,
God, that's awesome.
and he was only in town for the pilot, and I didn't work on the pilot, but my friends were makeup artists on the show, and they got me into the office, and I'm coming down a hallway hoping to meet Sam Raimi, and he comes out of his office like literally in front of me, and he was again very gracious. He signed autographs for me, took a picture with me. So I caught Sam Raimi, back in the mid '90s before he was, the Spider-Man director. He wasn't that big yet.
Oh wow. I've never got to see American Gothic because I was working so much when that was out.
Oh, you've got,
I
you know
kind
what? Here is your assignment. See
Okay.
if you can track it down. Now, don't, I don't know if it's expensive to buy the DVD set or
I know
anything.
they released it on
Yeah,
DVD
it's out
set.
there somewhere. But if you have Peacock or the Universal streaming service, I would think it would be there because it's definitely their property.
Well, it's just a show I'd watch. That's the funny part.
But you should put it in and do one with your horror movie next October, like one episode,
Oh,
because there's 22 of them, so it would get you
have
through
it as
most of the month.
a feature of like tonight. I did. I'm doing my Christmas movies, and
Right.
tonight I did an episode of Eight Is Enough paired with the Waltons movie.
Oh yeah, The
First,
Homecoming.
The Homecoming, which I love both those. The Waltons episode, which is ironic. I didn't do this on purpose. The Three's Company. The Eight Is Enough episode featured Will Gear, the grandpa from
Right.
Waltons, as the Roberts. Yes, Nicholas, there is a Santa Claus. Which that episode, I love that show. That episode makes me weep because Diana Hyland played Mother in the first season. She passed,
right,
and then he married Betty Buckley, and she finds and Tommy's acting. Willie Ames's character is acting all depressed and standoffish during the holidays, and they can't figure out why. And she finds this little gift left by his real mom that she was going to give him that Christmas, but she passed away. And at the end, he's just really just not wanting nothing to do with Christmas because he's mourning over his mom, and they give him that gift, and he just breaks down. And as do I, because that just me being the sentimental fool I am. And the irony of Will Gear's in that, but he's not in The Homecoming.
The show he's known for. Right.
Yeah. Edgar Bergen played his part. Ellen Corby's in it, but not Michael Learned or Ralph Waite. It's Trisha O'Neill. Not Trisha O'Neill. Wow. What's her name?
Oh, Patricia Neal. Patricia Neal.
Yeah.
The wife of Roald Dahl.
Dude.
The Willy Wonka writer's wife and widow. Yeah.
I can't believe I made that faux pas for all to hear. But yeah, famous actress. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, she played a very different Olivia Walton in the movie. I thought she was kind of scary, but then I later found out she was recovering from a stroke, which gave her kind of a strange. What's the word I'm looking for? It made her
line delivery and such.
Line delivery. Yeah. I
absolutely.
Looking back, I'm like, oh, that's why she had this kind of different approach to the character. But yeah, I'm doing my Christmas movie marathon right now, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to quit in this part because I have to go feed my mom. But I've enjoyed this so much, and I'd like to do it again because I know you've got a lot more stories.
Oh, you and I can tell some stories for sure.
Oh, Lord, we could go all night with this, actually. I was like looking at the time, and I thought, oh, shoot, I have things to do, don't I? But I really enjoyed this. It's always good talking to you, buddy, and thank you so much for taking your time out and talking to me on my podcast. It means a lot to me.
Well, I am absolutely thrilled to have been your first guest. I just can't believe that I got that honor, but thank you for letting me be on.
You were on my mind when I started doing this. I thought I'm going to eventually, because you have had just a very interesting life, and I'm proud to be your buddy. So, and I'm proud of you always.
Well, anytime you need me, call me. I'll be on this show. It's a pleasure and an honor. So thank you, sir.
It's an honor for me as well, sir. So thank you for joining, and thank everybody else for joining. From my head to your ears, I'm Leonard Riggs, and my special guest was Craig Edwards. And I'm going to say goodbye now. And good night. So thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
All right. I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast for my head to your ears. And that was a lot of fun. And thank you to Craig for talking to me. We had a great time doing that. Again, to my listeners, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you every week. I appreciate you coming into my store and telling me you enjoy it. It means a lot to me. I love podcasting. I love it, love it, love it. So I'll be back next week with another episode, and I'm looking forward to it. I've got some great ideas. And like I said, I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast, From My Head to Your Ears, and I'll be back next week.